Hey everyone, if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Awesome.
Oh, I didn't give a thumbs up, sorry. There was a squirrel.
Okay. Just so you know.
Hi everyone, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and get started.
But before we get started,
Well, this is getting started.
we got somebody here from OxyFresh, Doug from OxyFresh, which is a carpet cleaning. And I'll just let him. I was going to explain it because I talked to him about it a bunch, and it sounds amazing. But I'll let him come explain it. 1.5 gallons of water in a house, right? All right. Come on up.
Thank you. All right. Hey. I'm Todd with OxyFresh Carpet Cleaning. One of the world's greenest carpet cleaners. I'll explain why. Number one, we only use 1.5 gallons of water in a house instead of the 45 to 60 that you're used to seeing and hearing about. So instead of throwing a bunch of water in and sucking a bunch of water out, we put a very little bit in, and all we take with us is the dirt. The benefit to realtors, buyers and sellers alike, is that the house is ready and dry in less than an hour. So if I walk in, same day appointment, I clean it, I'm out. You guys can actually show it, sell it same day. Don't worry about people walking on it. It's not going to dirty it again. It's not going to do any of that stuff unless they're out playing in the mud. If the buyers are not interested in doing it and the sellers want to do it, we'll cut them the same deal. If they were to call our call center in Denver and say, hey, book me an appointment, five bedroom house is going to run about $225. We do it here in Columbia for $158. It's our realtor special. So if anybody calls in and says the keyword realtor, they're going to get that deal. So if you've got somebody just buying the house and they say, it's used carpet, kind of iffy, we'll go in and clean it, get all the spots out of it, get all the dog hair out of it, get all the allergens out of it. And next thing you know, it smells like clean carpet, brand new carpet. So don't hesitate to give us a call. We are local. I cover 30 zip codes in this area, from all the way from Elgin down to Batesburg, Leesville, all the way from Prosperity, all the way to Hopkins. So there's 2 vans going. One of us is kind of reserved for same day appointments, commercial jobs, emergencies, if you will. And the other guy is always running around with a full schedule. So happy to help you guys. My cards are outside. There's a stack of the coupons outside, a brochure as to what we do, what makes us different. Also pens and little post-it notes.
I'll vouch for Todd too. He did a great job at my house, and he also did one of my clients just recently. It does dry quickly, and he even leaves me with, do that with everybody? A little bottle of spot treater, so if something resurfaces, you can just hit it real quick. He did a great job.
We probably got some work to do around the office. There's a little bit like Animal House.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we do have a 7 to 10 day guarantee on spots. So if you see them, the way the standard carpet cleaner works is they're really just pushing that spot down, and as it dries, it wicks back to the surface. So 7 to 10 days later, you're looking at, well, they were just here. What happened? If that does happen with our product, which we don't over soak it, so it's not going to go push it down and come back up, it should just disappear. If it does, in 7 to 10 days, we'll come back and spot treat the whole thing for you. All right. Awesome. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks,
All right.
Todd.
Enjoy your meeting.
You're going to leave us some brochures.
Yep, I got a lot of them sitting in there for you.
Brochures back in the kitchen. All right. Panel, we go.
Okay, so today we are going to discuss the good, the bad, the ugly of repair addendums, setting up your client expectations, and how to effectively negotiate one in today's market. So we have actually 4 people. We have 3 people in the office, and Lori Carnes is on by Zoom because she wasn't feeling too well today with sinus infection. So Lori's by Zoom. She's also going to be monitoring chat to see if you guys have any questions. But if I say, hey, if anybody has any questions, unmute yourself so that we're not trying to figure out what the little tiny screen up there says that's 50 feet away from us right now. So today we've got Brian Faltis. Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Grew up here, right in Irmo, Dutch Fork High School. Real estate since June 13th, 2006. Keller Williams since July of 09. Been having fun ever since, especially lately.
Do you have any specialties, Brian?
Used to be expired, but they went the way of the dinosaurs. But I'm really hoping they'll come back one day.
So you're big into listings. That's like your forte.
Traditionally, but this year started out mostly buyers, so we'll see. Although today's a good day with two going on the market, so
Yeah, there we go.
I turned my phone off because otherwise it would drive me nuts.
Oh, did you want to tell us those two addresses real quick?
Sure.
Because it was not one he's running over.
115 Jasmine Bay Lane in Chapin, and oh good golly, Backwell, which I can tell you it's gonna be 240 in Blythewood, a 4-bedroom, and then they're gonna paint it next week.
Okay,
But the address is leaving me.
that's okay. You might think of it before we're done. All right, so we've
That's
got
this
Terry
afternoon.
Bowerlin.
Hi, everybody. Terry Bowerlin. This is my 8th year in real estate. I started with Russell and Jeffco when I first started for my first 3 years. Then I came to Keller Williams on Lisa Harris's team for 4 years. I handled almost 400 transactions for her. And then I went out on my own last year and I'm enjoying it. So.
Okay, we've got Tamika Cunningham.
Hello, I am the Vice President of Transactions for the Olivia Cooley Group, and I manage the closing department, which includes 2 transaction coordinators and 2 virtual professionals. Started in real estate 2015, been with Olivia Cooley since 2017.
Great. And I really appreciate the panelists here. Lori, do you want to give us a little bit of info about you?
Hi, I'm Lori Carnes. I'm the broker in charge of Keller Williams Palmetto and Keller Williams Orangeburg. I have been in the on my real estate journey since 1994. And I have journeyed through a lot of different levels of real estate, including advertising and publishing. I've worked in different states, different types of markets, been in Florida with the boom and the bust. I've worked on most every different aspect of real estate except for industrial or like farms with cows, although I've done horse farms. So that's about me.
Great. So we have a lot of knowledge here today. I've been in real estate just as long as Lori. I've been doing it since 1993, and I'm the broker in charge of this office and the Olivia Cooley office. So I'm hoping that every month we're going to have a great panel where we can discuss different things with different topics, and that everybody will get something out of it and walk away with something new that they've learned. So we're going to start off today with buyer expectations. So in today's market, Brian, how do you set up your buyer's expectations, and do you have a script for that?
I wish I had it written down as a script. I mean, for me, one of the thoughts I wrote down coming into this is know where you are. So when I'm working with a buyer, you have to know where you are. Are you going in on a property that's been on the market for 120 days and you're the only person that wrote an offer? Or did it go on the market yesterday? You were one of 28 people that saw it and 12 offers. If you're one of 12 offers and they're sitting on 2 backup offers, don't go in there thinking that you're going to ask for the sun, the moon, and the stars. And prepare your clients for the idea that we are only asking for things that are deal breakers for you. This isn't 2012 where we're asking for, we need a new roof, we need a new air conditioning unit, we need caulking done and screws in the door. That will land you into being, see you, we're not doing anything.
Right. How about you, Terry?
I try to set the expectation at my consultation before I even go to show them houses. I actually have I have a buyer's presentation, but I also have this little booklet. It's called the Roadmap to Home Buying. And it just talks about all the different parts of the transaction, including inspections. And it has all the way through the whole process, just to kind of give them a heads up when we talk about each item on the list. It's just a nice little handout to give them something to look over and to discuss and have that discussion then. Also, as far as a script, basically, similar to Brian, I basically said, you're not buying a brand new home. A home inspector's job is to find things that are wrong with the house. They're going to find everything from a cracked, switch plate to caulk to roof, etc. But I just say what's most important is that we're looking for things that are safety issues, moisture issues, drain problem, leaks, things like that. Your major items such as heating and air, moisture issues, termites, things that could be a deal breaker.
Did you make that brochure or did you
Yes.
get that somewhere?
I made it.
So that's something that you made up. Did you do it through Keller Williams or just on your own?
Actually, I did it, I went to Etsy, and Etsy has stuff that's already stuff for realtors, and you buy it, it's like $6. They'll email it to you. You can go and it goes into Canva and you just tweak it to yourself.
There you go.
I got scared
So-
last time, Kim.
That's interesting.
So anyway,
Okay, Tamika?
So, just like Terry mentioned, we do discuss it in the consultation. And with the market being the way it is right now, let them know, set their expectation from the beginning that a lot of sellers have so many options that they don't have to do the small items. But we do encourage them to ask for things that may be structural, electrical, or plumbing, major things that any buyer is gonna ask for in any market.
Right, right. How about you, Lori?
So I think that's great as a combination of what everybody's saying. I think is setting expectations at the beginning when you first meeting them is huge and it is a must. I always break down the difference between what things that you can see and what latent defects are and what the purpose of the inspection is.
Okay. So at what point do you guys start discussing a repair addendum? Like, are you discussing it here? You said from the beginning in your buyer consultation.
Yeah.
Are any of you like waiting until you're actually doing inspections? Are you doing it when you're walking through showing the house? Are you waiting until those reports come in and then you're like, okay, here are our options?
Well, it starts in the consultation, but then through the entire part, I was showing a house on Saturday and the roof was 17 years old. I'm already telling them the home inspector is going to write in here that the roof life expectancy is from 15 to 20 years old. Before she writes an offer on that house, I want her to know this is coming when she has the home inspection, and I'll guarantee what he's gonna write. So you're talking about it the whole step because you can't just say it once.
Right.
They'll never remember. This isn't what they do. You got to constantly be discussing the process with them.
Right, right. Terry, do you have anything to add to that?
I totally agree with Brian. And also, before I show a home, obviously I'm sending them the property disclosure. I'm reviewing the property disclosure in case there is something that is identified on that property disclosure. Maybe a key item that we want to be looking at as far as a repair addendum item that would be flagged or special inspections that we may want to have done. Like Brian said, if it's an older roof, you may want to have an actual roof inspection instead of just a home inspection.
Okay.
Like them and looking at the property disclosure and from both the buyer and the seller side, you start at the listing or the buyer consultation. If it's on the seller side and the roof is 17 years old, you let them know there's a high probability that it's going to be asked for, and give them options so that you can be ahead of it and not waiting on the within 24-hour contract that's going to come 5 days later with the roof request.
Lori, do you have anything about the buyer side of it?
I think that this market that we're in right now completely changes the game when it comes to negotiating repairs. So with that said, I think that everybody on that panel knows exactly what I'm talking about. Everybody probably in this business knows what I'm talking about. And so we are having to negotiate differently based upon what we see. In the past, I know when we were dealing with inspections and everything else before that, when we started touring the homes, is when we started noticing things. And that, carpet stretching or painting or anything that we can see, we were able to negotiate that at the beginning when we were negotiating the price of the home, right? Now we can't even do that anymore because we know that we're competing with like 15 different offers. So it kind of changes the game a little bit. So I think that when it comes to latent defects, roof, or situations when we see in the property disclosure, we need to be having conversations up front before we even write the offer with our buyers to see what their budget is. Because we need to let them know and set that expectation. If they're going to position themselves to win, we need to make sure that they have that budget if they're not going to fix something, that we can come in and understand that we're going to fix that. with their budget. And so I think that's something that we need to bring up and talk about as well. Because if we're under contract and negotiating repairs and it comes to like replacing a roof, there's 3 other backups that that seller is going to walk to. So that's kind of having, again, setting those expectations, then going back to the first question too.
Yeah, well, I know that,
I was gonna say dovetailing with what Lori was saying. I don't want my client, so with that roof being 17 years old, I was already discussing with them, and she was saying, are you prepared to replace a roof? This thing could go 2 years, it could go 4 years, but you're replacing that roof, so you need to be prepared for this. I don't want them spending the money on inspections if that roof's the deal breaker for them up front.
okay, so going a little bit off of what you guys have said, with the seller expectations, how are you setting that up? I assume that you guys are doing this sort of at the listing appointment these days, or are you doing it further along once it goes under contract, or waiting to see what the contract offers say? Or are you waiting for inspections and the repair addendum to come through?
Great big depends. What is it? What is it? Is it a cosmetic thing? Right now, we could sell a ham sandwich. But the question does come down to what price do you want to sell that ham sandwich for? So that can get into what the repairs are. Sometimes we have something like a roof that's 19 years old, and you can see the first leak in the corner. That's a conversation you're gonna have to have. But it's definitely, this market has changed the game completely on what you're going to have to do and not do.
So your seller expectations are dependent on the actual house itself when you go to see it?
And
Or
their
is
goals.
there sort of a script that you kind of use, like, well, just to even introduce the fact that there could be a repair addendum that's gonna come along?
We'll definitely go through the cycle of what the repair process and request are going to look like. And we'll talk.
At the listing?
At the listing appointment. I want to get everything up right up front. But the second part is then saying, all right, what is their goals when we're getting into things like what condition we're going to place the house in, which is a little bit of a different conversation. And what problems do we have going up? I've got a house that I sold the current owners 2 years ago that's going on the market in the next couple of months. When they bought it, I know there was an issue with the hall bathroom. They said, okay, we'll deal with it. Well, they didn't.
Of course not.
So now we're looking at, all right, what are we going to do with that? And they said, well, we don't want to fix it. All right, well, then we're giving them a copy of your home inspection when you bought the house. So setting that up front so that we don't get somebody coming after us after closing over this. If they didn't do inspections or they didn't find them in their inspections.
How about you, Terry?
At the listing presentation, I would go through the whole process. I do recommend that they consider doing a home inspection before it goes on the market, so they understand what things are going to pop up and they have more control. Because once they're under contract, it has to be done by a licensed contractor for the most part, and it gives them more control expense-wise and time-wise. They can get it figured out before they go on the market, so they kind of know what that looks like.
How about you, Tamika?
We do discuss it in the listing appointment. And one thing we also take into consideration is what you're listing for versus what needs to be done, and what your budget is if they do come back with repairs that they knew up front. And if you can get ahead of things like the roof, then if they can have it done by insurance and already have that started, which will save them money, versus once you're under contract, you're on a time crunch.
Right.
So you're not having time to deal with insurance and that type of thing. But if you have a little bit of time in the beginning, look through those major items that they already know or have concerns about to get ahead of it so that you're not out of budget.
Okay. Lori?
I think the panel has said a lot of that. Listing appointment, absolutely, we must review that. I'm with Terry about doing a pre-home inspection. I don't like surprises, and I think that sets our sellers up for success. The other thing that we need to add to our conversation is talking about FHA, VA, and USDA loans, because if we don't talk about that, some of these appraisers, and so the inspection and appraisers for some of these loans are kind of combined in one, and a lot of times will happen after the due diligence period, but it still can affect the deal Because if they're saying that things need to be repaired before they will back any lender for the money, then we're kind of stuck. And that can follow them as well. So we need to have these conversations up front and make sure that they understand that some of these components that might get dinged, they'll have to fix either way. The other thing is when we talk about repairs, like replacing the roof or replacing the HVAC, some of those things might also help appreciate market value for them. So if they're going to be asking, if they replace the roof, then they might be able to ask a little bit more for the property because that helps with market value.
Yeah, like at the top of the range.
Yeah.
There's always a range that it could be listed in, and so where does, the top of that range go, and what does it look like to get there? Yeah, exactly. So I know a lot of people right now are using closing coordinators, transaction coordinators, whatever you want to call it. So Brian, do you use one, and do they negotiate the repair addendum for you, or do you do it? How do you see that part of the process going?
Even when I had people doing transaction coordination, I was still handling the repair addendum.
Okay, so
Not
you
because I
receive-
wanted to necessarily, it's my least favorite part of real estate, but just strange being up on a panel, but because it's the most conflict part of the whole thing, but yeah, I've always handled it myself.
Okay. How about you, Terry?
Same, I've always handled them myself, and when I was on the team, the agents handled their own repair addendums.
So the inspections were ordered. Did you do the ordering of
I
the
did the
inspections?
ordering of the inspections. I communicated with the client about what inspections they wanted.
And you got them in,
I
made sure they
ordered-
came in.
Yeah, and then the buyer's agent or the listing agent met them at the house.
Okay,
And then they did the repair addendum.
okay.
And then I just follow up on the back end to make sure all the invoice, if they want to do a re-inspection, all the invoices are in for all the repairs that were done.
Okay. And how about you? Are you,
So on the buyer's side, the buyer's agent does the transaction coordinator coordinates and orders the inspections. The buyer's agent meets their client and attends the inspections. Buyer's agent writes the repair addendum.
Okay.
On the listing side, once it goes under contract, everything is handled by transaction coordinator, repair addendum, negotiations, all handled by a licensed realtor, transaction coordinator.
okay. Lori?
I feel like I'm handling my own and everybody else's too. Yeah, I handle my own. I always, if there's going to be a conflict, it is definitely going to be with repair negotiations on both sides. So, that's where a psychology degree would probably help best in this business. So yeah, I'm hands-on with that one.
Psychology, marriage
Yeah,
counseling.
Yeah. So
Sure.
I know we kind of touched on it a little bit already, Brian, when you were talking, well, all of you did really. So if you're handling the buyer, are there specific repairs that you definitely say, like this is a first-time home buyer, they know nothing from nothing, and thank God they don't have a parent or somebody like advising them. So if you're the one advising, you're their only source of a real estate professional in this transaction, are there certain things that you kind of like to point out that you say, hey, these might be items of concern?
Always. So, my style, so I'm always going to share with them, first, if it's something that you don't like, we need to talk about it up front. Now, as Lori said, the game's changed. This is in 2014 where you'd write them up front if, the windows were fogged up. But we're still going to go through and talk about it right off the bat. This is an expensive thing: roof, air conditioning units, things that if you don't have a lot of spare money, you're going to need to be prepared for. It also comes up in, do we need to ask for the closing costs if we can get them? Because we know there's some things that we're going to have to pay for after closing. But I literally go as far as write a rough draft of the addendum and then send it to them. Say, you can add or subtract anything you would like. Please take time to talk to all the inspectors if you'd like. But this is the starting point.
So you're actually kind of preparing the repair addendum for
Yeah,
them?
I'll do
based
a
on-
draft for them because most of them, they don't have any idea where to start. So I'll go through and say, hey, these are the things I'm thinking. If there's something, be sure to go through carefully yourself. And I have lots of language of, please be sure to review all inspections carefully and speak to any repair inspectors you would like. Because I don't want to come back, Brian told me what to write. No.
Do you put in your repair addendums that, that you suggest that they use a specific contractor to do the repair? Do you go that far? with yours?
Rarely. I will quote the exact number in the home inspection and all the pictures, because I don't want to leave any doubt. And I will say this is exactly what we want done. Patch the hole, paint the entire wall from this point to this point. But I've rarely said we want an exact contractor. That's
Okay.
unusual for me.
Well, I know that
A
in some of
contractor.
mine, like if it came to like a foundation repair, I'm gonna recommend a specific company over other companies, and I'm probably going to want to say to my buyers, hey, we need to ask for this company because they do lifetime warranty and I've seen their work type of thing. So that is one thing that sometimes you get a seller who wants to just cheap out and find the cheapest foundation company they can, and it may not be the best company. So that's like the one repair I would say that I'm like, no, we need to
Okay.
use this company. How about you, Terry?
Well, on the buyer side, I always give them the option before I'm scheduling the appointments that, do you know of any of these types of inspectors? And most of the time they don't. I usually give them a few names of each type of inspection. I usually recommend a heating and air, a home warranty, and a termite inspection. Those are the three that I always recommend.
Home inspector.
Yeah, home inspector. And then based on what the home inspector comes back with, there may be some other issues that need to be addressed, a chimney, a roof, a pool or whatever. Just depends on the property itself. But I definitely recommend those three. And then just depending on the property,
Do you ever recommend specific contractors to do the repairs?
I do if they don't know of anybody, and they, there's people that I've worked with, and being on the team, I worked with several. I built a relationship with them.
And but on the repair addendum itself, are you telling the seller, hey, we want you to
Stipulate.
use?
Not usually, unless the buyer definitely wants to use that person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sort of situational.
Yeah, situational, yeah.
We don't normally put on a repair addendum to use a specific contractor. But if we have gotten quotes from a contractor, we'll send that with it. And that way the seller can see what amount, and where we get the figure that we're asking for.
Try to do a little bit of work for them.
Right, and save them, because the buyer had 10 days, the seller has 5. And we expect them, if you have used your 10 properly and you know that you want someone specific A or want several things done, give them a reason to say yes more quickly. If they already, this is only gonna be $500 if we let them use, and if the buyer has selected or seen more than one quote and sent it, then they're using who the buyer wants to use. That usually also helps you get through things a little more quickly.
True. Lori?
Actually, I've seen this question come up a couple times just recently where the buyer's asking the seller to use a specific contractor. And it really depends on who I'm personally representing in this situation. If I'm representing the seller and you want me to repair something and use your contractor, I'm going to go ahead and start negotiating a number or a dollar amount. And then I'm going to say to you, hey, listen, and you can take that dollar amount and you can apply it to whatever contractor you want to at closing. If you want me or my sellers to repair something, then the sellers are going to get to pick and choose that contractor, especially in this market. I mean, different markets are going to call for different negotiations. This market, that's kind of what I'm playing with right now.
Okay.
The one caveat of the time that I will specifically suggest one is if I feel something a little bit goofy is going on. Like a air conditioning unit was not installed properly. I get a little nervous about letting them have somebody installed again when they had somebody that, at least according to the one person that I trust, is saying, this was not done in a proper manner or anywhere close. That's the only time. Now, this marketplace, you gotta be careful because all bets are off nowadays.
Yeah, or if the seller says that they fixed something and then your inspection shows that it was not fixed right, it's like, okay, that puts into doubt any other repairs that they might do based on your repair addendum. Is it gonna be done in the same kind of non-workmanlike manner?
Yes, we get into one of them.
Yeah. Now, so when you said that you kind of will set up your repair addendum a little bit in advance. Are there any standard clauses that any of you use that either for repairs or for closing out the addendum. I know with time being of the essence and buyers, you know, okay, they might be done with their inspections by day 6. Do they really want to wait till day 15 to hear a response back? So do you ever close out your due diligence period, or do you let it go all the way just in case something else comes up?
I don't write in the language to close it out. It's not a big factor to me. I mean, if I've turned in my addendum, we're done. Now, I can understand from the seller's standpoint, if they would start, hey, are you gonna bring anything else up? Because I have that happen about every 3 years, where they turn in a repair addendum and then here's something else we want done. But for the most part, no, when we just turn in our addendum, that's our finish line.
Okay.
I don't add that language in there either as far as ending the due diligence, but I do try to make sure that I'm putting the language in there, depending on what the inspection report says, to repair or replace. And I always add the extra verbiage by a licensed contractor, even though it's in the typed version, I always add in there to be repaired or replaced by a licensed contractor.
Just in case they didn't read that upper
Yeah,
paragraph.
Exactly.
Like most people don't read the
Right.
instructions.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's amazing how that happens. Like,
Exactly.
you have instructions.
And I try to write out exactly what we're looking for and use the verbiage from the inspection report. But sometimes instead of just putting a number, C1A, you know, then you're trying to go back and forth. You know, I try to write out specifically what my client wants on the report itself,
Okay.
on the addendum.
I suggest if they are turning in the repair addendum early, to put in the verbiage that this ends the buyer's due diligence, and the seller has now 5 days to respond, so that you can, in this world, actually close in 30 days. Because if you turn it in 5 days and the seller still has 10 days, then some of them will take the whole 10 days, no matter if their agent is pushing them or not, no matter if your buyer is asking them every day. So it's suggested, but it's not a norm. Right now, I'm seeing a lot where we will just update the contract to 5 days due diligence and.
On the buyer side?
On the buyer side.
So when you're writing a buyer's offer, you're putting in there that you're only gonna do a 5-day due diligence.
Correct.
You must have some Johnny on the spot inspectors.
They can usually get us in about 2 days.
That's great.
And if they write it, when they turn the contract in to the closing department, they let us know, this, we don't have to wait to read it. This only has 5 days, due diligence, please go ahead, they've selected whoever they've selected for their inspectors and get them scheduled. And I've had even where, because it is only 5 days, they told the inspectors who normally would send the inspection to the closing department. They'll tell the inspector, I'm working on this over the weekend, make sure you CC the agent in addition to the closing department when you send it, so that I can keep working.
Okay.
Gotta get on that horse. 5 days, he's riding.
Yeah. Lori?
I think everybody had valid points. I think for me, it depends on the time frame that the contract's supposed to close in, as far as negotiations when it comes to dealing with time when it comes to due diligence period. Also, depending on what type of contract we're using, because CCRA contract's different from the state contract. So your repair and your due diligence is going to be set up differently on that state contract. So you kind of have to really take a look at how you're doing that. I'm always a proponent of doing a due diligence period because that allows you to do your repairs, but it also allows us to verify all the information the seller and the seller's agent has given us, which is very important. We must not forget that that's a big part of our due diligence period. So I like to keep it and use it for that full amount, just because there might be something else I need to verify, because inspections is just part.
Okay. Are any of you having to extend your due diligence period for anything? I mean, it sounds like Tamika, you guys.
So even with the 5 days, those we have not had to have extended. Every now and then, we will get one extended, but in most of those cases, it's like Laura was saying, it's a closing date that's farther out. But the ones that are trying to get in and out in 30 days, they're not extending their, they're done.
What about you guys? Are you having to extend due diligence for any reasons?
Extraordinary, that might be something that's happened twice in 10 years. I mean, that just doesn't, that'd have to be one heck of an issue to have, not be able to do it in 10.
Well, it depends, especially if you do the basic home inspection, like I said, and something else pops up, say your chimney has an issue. Chimney guys are really hard to get. I don't know if you guys have tried, but yeah, chimney guys are really hard to get. And within a quick turnaround time, at least in my experience. I don't know about you, Tamika, have you?
Chim inspector, depending on when you catch them.
Yeah.
You can,
Yeah.
you can get them in and
Yeah.
a week.
Yeah, but there's certain categories that it's harder to get them in to check. So sometimes you do have to ask for that.
Yeah, I feel that structural engineers can be hard to
Structural
get
engineers too,
Yeah.
that's
in
another
a good
one.
amount of time.
Yeah.
How about you, Lori? Do you know of any?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention structural. If you have a structural issue, I've seen that come up more and more, because they're hard to get out there and you really need to verify what's going on with that property before moving forward. Andrew posted something in our Zoom chat that said, always check with the state contract whether a CL 100 is required and who's going to pay, because our state contracts are written a little bit differently than the CCRA. So that's a great addition to remind everybody if you're working with that state contract. But yeah, I've had to extend for many different reasons. Most of them have to do with structural though.
Okay. So, we have a standard repair addendum, like everybody knows, like throw on there the items that the buyer wants to request. Let's think outside the box a little bit. What other types of workarounds have you done when you didn't want to scare the seller off? Like, okay, well, the buyer wants this, but what other things have you put on repair addendum to help it? Just thinking outside the box, like, are you doing allowances? I mean, what other things are you doing?
Well, not an allowance because we can't officially, that gets into mortgage fraud a little bit depending on how it's done. But I am a big proponent of a check cut to a third party contractor at closing. Because I want to manage my client's money out. So air conditionings, roofs,
Fences.
galvanized piping underneath the house in Keenan Terrace. So when you're dealing with 20 grand worth of repairs that come up, and they're legitimate repairs that you can't really get around, but you're sitting there with your client, they have no money, but they have equity in the house. And so I'm a big believer of checks cut to third parties on the settlement statement. It's right there, it's very clear, here it is, everybody can see it.
But how do you write that clause? I mean, it has to be specifically written a certain way.
A check shall be cut for X number of dollars at closing to a third party contractor of the seller's choice, of the seller buyer's choice, or if we know exactly who it's going to be.
Okay, so in other words, this check can't go straight to the buyers from the sellers, right?
No.
No,
Big
because that's
no.
illegal.
Right.
My
So,
favorite form with the DHA symbol on it, yes, they say no.
so the buyers would need to have a contractor in mind before stipulating this, because they need to know this, they're not getting the check themselves.
But then I'll have contractor quotes for all of it. I mean, I could have it, if they want something different, that's fine, but this is the dollar figure.
Do you have to check with the lender in any situation to make sure that seeing an allowance on the closing statement, are there any, I guess,
It's
Lori,
just a check,
It's an
it's a
invoice.
check cut to
right,
XYZ contractor.
are there any financing types that won't allow that, or is that permissible for all?
I've never
financing
seen
types?
one that's a check to a third party contractor that they had a problem with.
Okay, Lori, do you know of any?
I always check with the lender just to make sure nothing will pop up, because I would not want that to happen at closing where they're like, oh, what is that? So I will check with the lender. I do this a lot, but Caitlin had a good point too, because she put in the post repairs paid for at closing out of seller proceeds and repairs completed post closing. So that's another option. But I do the same. I really like to just go ahead because of the time frames and limitations. And I don't know about y'all, but lately the contractors are taking forever just to get out there. They're so backed up. So not to delay the deals, and we know that these deals are being delayed for many other reasons lately. I would rather just go ahead and have a check cut to a third party contractor at closing and let that buyer manage that transaction and get to pick, their contractor before they get to that settlement statement table,
Terry,
Yeah, same thing, but also, we usually ask the closing attorney to give the check to the buyer so that the buyer can give the check to the contractor when the work is complete. So the check is made out to that contractor with that invoice, but the buyer's holding the check. So when they come to do the work, they hand them the check when the work is done. So that way, that transact takes it away from the attorney and leaves it in the buyer's hands.
For large amounts, you do want to check with a lender and you don't have to give them all of the details because they don't want to know all of the details, but they do need to know if $20,000 is on the settlement statement for structural, because they might not allow it. I don't know if it's a specific loan type, but I do know that some lenders will say this has, because of the type of repair, it has to be completed before closing, and then we need to know that it's completed. So, and I've heard that more on structural items.
so higher dollar amounts are kind of a flag.
Yes, higher dollar amount, or even a high dollar amount or a certain name. If they see TerraTech, you know, it might be $5,000, but it's still TerraTech. So what structurally was wrong? So you may want to at least check and say, hey, can this be on the settlement statement? And if not, find ways to work around it, because some companies like TerraTech will say, okay, well, since we can't be paid out of the closing, then we'll schedule a day or two after, or they'll schedule a day or two before so that it can be done right before closing. But they're not going to do it 3 weeks in advance.
Right.
And then close and get
So they
paid.
might wait a day or two, they'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Where they get clear to close, you know, make sure they get clear to close before they,
And that way you have lender approval to have it on the settlement statement, and the work is actually completed and not having to wait till after close.
Do you guys have any other sort of thinking outside the box ways of doing repair addendums or getting around repair addendums?
Just a thought that I think is important. Never hesitate to confirm things in writing. If your client is taking on responsibility for a $20,000 foundation repair that's done 2 days before closing, never hesitate to send them a quick email and ask them to respond that they understand exactly. You understand that if this does not close, you are responsible for the attached invoice in the amount of.
And that's the seller's responsibility?
The seller, if you're 2 days before closing, if the buyer goes bye-bye, the seller's gonna end up paying for that thing. Otherwise, it's a lien against the property.
Right.
So confirm what, I'm always sending emails to confirm, because I wanna have that in writing if it ever comes back. No, I didn't understand it. No.
Yeah. Lori, do you have any outside of the box ideas?
Well, it's not really outside the box, but I think it's vital for us when we're going over repairs and creating a repair addendum with the buyers to have conversations with the buyers of how they're envisioning this work to be done. Because so many times they'll come and do that walkthrough to do a re-inspection, and they're like, well, that's not what I wanted. That's not how I thought it was going to be done. So we need to have those conversations ahead of time so we understand where their mindset is when we're writing that repair addendum. We're getting those repairs or replacements done the way they want and what they're thinking. It's all, we got to get in their head, and we got to be asking questions.
Do you think that comes down to also making sure that the repair addendum is very detailed?
Oh.
So that there isn't a miscommunication?
100%. And you know, the biggest thing that I'm seeing, and I'm just going to mention this right now, that we need to all do better on, please, if anybody's out there that's doing a repair addendum that just says see attached repair addendum, that's a problem. Stop doing it immediately, because all you're doing is asking the other side to take a look at what the inspectors are recommending, which is go call another contractor and have it taken a look at. And if I say yes to it, I have not agreed to repair or replace anything. I just said I was going to look at the report. So don't be all crying when you come and do when you come to the closing table or do the re-inspections or whatever you're going to do, because we didn't fix anything, because we never agreed to it. We just agreed to look at the report. So you guys got to do better on that.
Yeah. I have one idea that worked recently that I'm surprised you guys didn't mention, actually, is we had some minor repairs. It was going to be like $2,000-3,000, And so instead of doing the allowance, the buyer turned around and asked, could we get closing costs instead? Because that was upfront money they would have to bring, and then they could do the, I think in this case, it was like a stove and some other little things. We could just do that on Lowe's credit card after closing and not finance it, so we'd rather have the closing costs. So we actually just did a repair, addendum that said, that buyer and seller agree, seller's gonna pay $2,000 in closing costs. So sometimes you can
That's true.
rework it to be something else. As long as, I would just say that if you're on the side representing the person who's just saying, well, instead of repairs, let's just ask, for closing costs, get that in writing, just so that they understand, hey, that, okay, those repairs are now gonna be on you after closing, that the seller isn't doing that particular repair. So,
And be cognizant of separating addendums.
yes, you cannot send a repair addendum to a lender.
In lieu of doing this, we're gonna reduce the closing cost
Right.
$1,000.
Or I've also seen it where we've taken it off the price of the house instead of closing costs.
Yeah,
Drop the price.
are there any reasons, pro or con against reducing the price?
Reduces your.
It's not getting them any money, so it depends on the
Because Terry
buyer.
says it reduces your commission. I think we all kind of went there
It
first.
doesn't, your client could be a situation where something's broken and they drop the price $1,000, it's still broken. And if it's important to them, sometimes you just horse trade.
Yeah.
For some reason Whirlpool tubs and me don't get along well. They're 10 years old, they break, you can't get parts for them jets to save your ever-loving life.
The still
And
works in the
so,
bathtub.
right.
one that comes to mind off Park Gravel Road, I traded a termite bond for like several jets that couldn't be repaired. You just horse trade
Yeah,
sometimes.
Right. But if it's a cash buyer, you could reduce the price.
Yeah,
They're not asking
cash
for
buyer
closing
works
costs.
beautifully.
Yeah,
I remember those.
yeah.
And one thing to remind your sellers, some sellers are like, well, I don't want to reduce the price. Well, one thing, I remind them is, okay, well, don't forget that your deed stamps and commission are based on the price. So by reducing the price, you're actually saving a little bit of money. And also the taxes for the buyer will be based on the new lower price. So that actually kind of helps them. So there's a lot of reasons why now, and you may or may not want to bring this up, but if they're having a hard time with it, that's something to think about, that, it could actually be in their favor to reduce the price instead of just doing closing costs.
Get them out of the what it is and get it to monetize. I monetize everything. I don't want to sell the refrigerator with the house. How much is the refrigerator worth to you? I don't want to do this. How much is that? All right, we're going to say $500. That's great. And your next mortgage payment on this vacant house is $2,000. You want to walk away over the $500? Monetize everything. Gets it out of their head of, that's not really broke. That's not fair. It's $500. Let's talk about $500 and work on $500. And that's all I will call it. It's $500. Let's talk about $500. I don't want them thinking about what it is anymore.
Right.
Chunk it down. That's a great point.
How about you, Tamika, about anything?
You took them. Mine was the closing costs and the price reduction.
Just do it.
Those are my arguments.
Okay, so that works for quite a few people, then, is what I'm hearing, right?
Cut the deal
So-
before you can.
So going into what Brian was saying, how many of you out there have had unreasonable clients, whether it's the buyer or the seller? I mean, it happens all the time, right? Like, okay, why aren't they getting this? Recently, it just happened to me, my sellers, I sent them the repair addendum. I told them there are three choices. You can either do everything, not do anything, or do X, Y, but not Z. Okay, and then they said, okay, well, we'll do these things. Well, we're not doing the roof, and we're not, the roof was just some little nail pops, some minor things. And I'm like, well, why don't you just think about it overnight? They're like, well, blah, blah, blah. And when a few hours later, okay, well, we got someone coming out tomorrow about the roof, even though they adamantly says, well, let's just think about it. I'm finding that a lot of sellers get a little hot-headed and just their immediate response is, we're not doing anything, we've got all these offers. So how are you guys dealing with your buyers and sellers if they're kind of being unreasonable in this negotiation process or, getting stuck?
Nothing takes place in a vacuum. It's one of the hardest things I ever learned in real estate, because my brain, for those of you who know me, I'm fairly analytical. So, Jeanette Womble taught me, sometimes you gotta give you the emotional side. No, what's that? My eye's only a 4, so, there wasn't a whole lot to work with. And so the first thing is, what else is going on? You could be dealing with a divorcing couple. They'll say no to something just to tick off the other one. Is there something, did they lose their job? Did something happen in their life? What's going on? So oftentimes they're yelling, but they're not yelling about the item that you're talking about. And so, and then control what your reaction is. Don't jump in the hole with them, because they'll sit there, and I come out of the cold days of 2008, so that's, my formative days of the business. Get there and help them find a solution instead of see too many agents jump in the hole with them. That buyer's absolutely wrong. They're an idiot. We're not doing that because they're stupid. You just jumped in the hole with them and you're not figuring this out. You're trying to help them out of it. So listen, see if you can figure out what they're actually concerned about. Can you bring it down to a dollar figure? And if you're about to lose, go for a tie, which is just postpone. If they're saying, I'm absolutely not going to repair this, I hear you. We need to start getting some quotes on some things. Let's talk about this some more after I get some more quotes. I'm still going to get the quote on the thing they don't want to get. I don't even want to discuss repairs until I know what every single thing costs. That's one of my basic things is when we receive the repair notice, yeah, I'm not sure about some of these things, but let's go ahead and get estimates on everything. Because if it's a deal breaker, I want to know how much that deal breaker cost.
Okay. How about you, Terry?
Basically, same thing that you just said is, don't jump in the hole. Just don't be defensive. You're there to help them and be a sense of reason, and tell them that you want to get the estimates on this and see what it looks like from a financial standpoint before you jump to any conclusions or make any decisions. That's why you have 5 days or more, if you have a longer due diligence, to have those conversations and to bring them into reality. Also, you want to remind them of their motivation of why they want to sell or why they want to buy. It helps bring it home, that no house is perfect, not even a brand new house, and that, what are they willing, what's a deal breaker, what's not a deal breaker. But let's see what it looks like financially and remind them of their motivation.
First thing in my script, the next step is to get an estimate on making these repairs. You have to know what you are saying yes or no to. Right. You cannot make an educated guess. Agents, stop asking us the next day, has the seller made a decision?
No.
The seller hasn't even got the first estimate back yet, and they need to know what it costs, because like Ryan said, if it's $500, in their mind, it was 1,000, and the 500 is a lot easier to deal. Oh yeah, we can do more than what we expected. Or if the 5 things you asked for equals $1,000 and the roof is gonna be 5,000, and you can agree to the 5,000 and not do the 1,000, then the buyer can also see, well, this is where we can put the money, and that also lets them know where they can put their money if they have any to put into it. But you gotta know what it costs. You gotta know what you're doing.
Right. Lori?
So yeah, estimates are key. You can't negotiate anything if you don't know what you're negotiating, right? So that's important. I think timeouts are valid here too. I think that sometimes when people get a little bit emotional, a timeout is what you need to do. You need to give somebody a timeout, let them go ahead and just take some time and reevaluate. And most of the, I don't know about y'all, but most of the time somebody screams at me and then I say, you know what, let's just take a timeout. Let's go ahead and we'll catch up in a couple hours. And when you get back on the phone with them, they're apologizing. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. I didn't mean to overreact. It's okay. We'll figure it out. So don't overreact. Don't bounce back. Give people some space and room to breathe, because you need to do that when it comes to emotions and negotiations. And I'm going to just kind of go back to the fact of being prepared. So if you had a pre-inspection, and this is just my school of thought, people do their businesses differently, but if you had a pre-inspection and you knew what was going on with that property, you're setting those expectations. So you're not stuck in the middle of a negotiation for repairs, getting surprises left and right that could be disastrous or a deal breaker. And so that's why I'm always a proponent of pre-inspection. So you have all of the tools and information up front.
Right. Okay. So we've kind of gone through the majority of the repair addendum part. What about re-inspections?
Yes.
Yes.
My first reaction, are you nuts? Re-inspections are the greatest thing in the world to make sure that the repairs are actually done. I can't tell you how many houses I've shown up to for re-inspection, repairs weren't done, sometimes none of them. Sometimes after I've received an invoice that they were done, or hot water heaters for some reason are never fixed right. I don't know why this is. And I am not qualified to go in and say if it's fixed. I don't want to go into the crawl space. Last time I did, I broke a pipe and that didn't go well. And so know and have your client prepared up front. We're going to do this. In addition, if it's something that's on the home inspection, I'm also going to offer them the opportunity, hey, this is what it costs to have the heating and air specialist come back out. This is what it costs to have the termite guy. Even if I don't necessarily think it's important, I'm going to leave them that option because they're making the choice. And that way, when it's closed, you say, yeah, we checked this. This was working at that time. I think re-inspections are everything. It's like the home inspector that does them for free.
So you're not waiting until the final walkthrough for your re-inspection?
I gave that up about 7 years ago and it went very poorly and I showed it there and it wasn't done right. I was like, no.
Yeah.
I learned that one in blood.
Yes. Jerry?
For the most part, I say definitely do a re-inspection. I have a little story to tell you about one of my deals. I sold a house last year that was a for sale by owner. The owner was an agent. And
That's kind of
he did a flip and everything looked new, but you could just tell it was done quickly. New heating and air unit, everything. I did a home inspection. I recommend heating and air inspection because that heating and air inspection was new, but I didn't know if the ductwork was still good or if the heating and air unit was put in properly. Just so happens that my heating and air guy, one of the items that was found that was on our repair addendum is that they put too short of a pan. So water was dripping in the ceiling. So they sent me, because everything was new, like I said, and it was in the attic, they took a picture and sent me a receipt. Well, I took the picture that they had the new pan, they got the invoice for the new pan. I did not have my heating and air guy come back out. We were doing our final walkthrough. We couldn't open the bedroom door. Finally got the bedroom door open like this. I took a picture. The whole ceiling caved in. That pan was not level and it dripped on the ceiling and the whole ceiling fell in 2 hours before closing.
Thank God it was before
And thank goodness you walked. I never
Yeah.
understand why people don't walk. Do the
And
final
we
walkthrough.
were thinking about doing the walkthrough the night before, but I said, let's just do it the morning of. And I'm glad we did because it probably wouldn't have fallen through that night before. So just anything can happen. I mean, I felt like I had all my things covered, but I highly recommend re-inspection. And my home inspector does the re-inspections for free also.
Okay.
We usually do a re-inspection if there are larger items, like Brian said, we're agents, we're not walking in crawl spaces and things like that. But if it's not, and if they do get away with just minor things, then we might just do a visual and not do a re-inspection. The visual at the final.
But so for most part, you guys are doing your re-inspection as well?
Don't sound like much of that. Only if it's larger items.
Okay, I'm just saying it's cosmetic, maybe not, but well, in today's market, since most people aren't asking for cosmetic items, and that to me means that we've got some bigger ticket items. So for the most part, I'm hearing that we are trying to encourage re-inspections.
Not a lot of carpet stretching requests right
No.
Yeah.
Or caulk around that.
now. No call. But we're getting good at that one, so that's a shame.
Re-inspections need to be a must. We need to verify that these things are being done correctly and being done at all, because how many times, just like what Brian said, I've had many times where someone's walking through and nothing's done. So we want to catch that. Also, what we need to mention, and I know some addendums already have a time frame on there when we have to do the actual repair addendums, but I always make sure that there's a time frame for the work to be done before closing, so we have time to re-inspect and make sure things are done correctly and not wait for the last minute. I think that's really important to mention.
Yeah, I know our CCRA repair addendum does have a spot in there for how many business days prior to closing work is supposed to be completed. Now, I will mention that if you have a specialty loan, which means non-conventional, if it's anything besides conventional, call it specialty, that between the appraisal, maybe not having come back in yet, you may not, if your closing time is too short, there may not be enough time for the appraisal to come back to know if they're going to require anything before your seller has to do repairs. So do know that you have to give the seller enough time for the appraisal to come back as well. I find that when I give my inspection reports repair done to my seller, I immediately have to tell them, don't start doing the repairs yet. Because they're like, see this, okay, well, we'll just do, it's like, stop for a minute, okay? First of all, we need to decide how much of this can you do, but also, let's look at the inspection report. Because if the buyer didn't ask for something that's likely to come up, like if there was some rotten wood, and they didn't ask for it, but there's a good chance that the appraiser is gonna ask for it, we may need to leave something to do that horse trading with after the appraisal comes out. So that the seller can do a required repair over something that maybe wasn't required. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
I mean, the FHA and VA elephants. I think now it's one of the weirdest spot I've never seen before, where now so many times they require VA repair, seller will tell you, nope, we're not gonna do it, we're just selling conventional. You don't like their appraisal, so we're just gonna go back. Or we're putting houses on the market that are for conventional or cash so much more often because you can get conventional or cash. So yeah, if it's something that, you know, I had a client right at the beginning of COVID down in was it Charleston version of Prior Scheme down there at Bottom Hill, Indian something or another.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Charleston Prior Scheme.
Yes.
And it was one whole side of the house was peeling paint. And I had talked with an appraiser, and he said, yeah, that'll come up on an FHA, which I'm pretty positive would. And the seller wanted to roll the dice on it. When we got an FHA offer, I said, hey, I think it's at best a 50-50, this is gonna get through. Now, I don't know if Chris the appraiser was just having a bad day and just walked in the house. He walked by a side of peeling paint, the whole side of the house. He didn't care, but I was preparing the seller up front. Even after we do all the repairs, this won't occur, or after we do all these requests, this won't come up until the very end. And it could be a couple $1,000 item
Game changer.
to do it. So letting them know ahead, if you say something up front, you're a profit. If you say it on the backside, you're a buffoon. But so make sure you're telling them things up front that are coming.
Right. Setting up expectations.
And if that one worked out, because I don't know what kind of day Chris was having when he did it, but
Yeah, I was just told that the VA appraiser told me last week that they're just doing, if the home is occupied, they are only doing the exterior, they're not going inside the house. So the days of, oh yeah, those smoke detectors, the VA appraiser will catch that, oh, this or that. They're only doing the outside inspection and measuring. And that's what he told me he was gonna be doing this week at the house I've got occupied.
that's a good chance.
Yeah.
That's all
So,
it does.
so how about you, Tamika, do you have anything else you would like to add?
I'd like for them to, I stress, we need to have an agreement before you start doing anything. Because what you do may not be the most important to them, and they may need you to do something else. And if you've already spent this on something that's not important, then you can't afford to do what is important. Don't do anything. And even though we stress having a licensed contractor, if the seller is handy and wants to do things on their own, you have to have the buyer's agreement. You cannot just go fix the faucet. Have the buyer's agreement.
So in other words, on repair addendums, if your seller's going, but I can fix that outlet, I mean, that's no big deal, it only costs me a couple dollars to get the part at Lowe's, but an electrician is gonna charge, $85 to $100. So I have to keep stressing, okay, well, we need to put on there then seller to complete this item and see if they agree with that before we know that, that they will. Because you can change that to say seller will complete this, and if the buyer agrees, then everyone's in agreement. It's not like an all or nothing thing. You'll see these repair addendums, and some of the items could just be done by the seller very easily, but because the paragraph at the top says by licensed contractor, And again, with today's market, I'm not seeing as many little things on our pair addendums as I used to. So hopefully, that's gonna cut out a little bit of that. Well, this isn't as important as something else, but it still could happen. Lori, how about you? Do you have any final thoughts?
I just think communication's key. Just make sure you communicate with your buyers or with your sellers. Keep that communication open. Don't make any assumptions. We are working with them, but ultimately you have to remember it's their decision. And when I do communicate, I always follow up with and in writing, and I ask them to come back and verify and agree while I'm drafting things up. I think that's really important. Always back it up in writing just to make sure that you are on the same page, because sometimes we hear something and it's different than what they're trying to convey. So we have to kind of get to what the bottom line is, just setting those expectations. The last thing I want to say is also make sure you're collecting invoices. I always ask for all invoices. I know the attorneys will too, but I like to have them in my file. So when we do the re-inspections, we can cross-reference. So I think that's important as well.
Okay. Do you guys have anything else to add, or I'm going to open it up for questions?
Just the last statement is don't make the other agent the enemy.
Yeah.
If you do this for any length of time, a lot of people in the room can speak to this. You're going to see the same agents, and they're the person in a great position to help you work it through, because sometimes you're just going to be a loggerhead with clients and go, hey, John, we really wants to work this out. What kind of ideas do you have? I'm thinking this. You can kind of bounce things around and just keep it civil, and then you're going to be, work with this agent again in the future. And you're gonna be in a multiple offer, and they'll might pick yours if they like you. So just don't make them the enemy. I see that too much, where the other agent will call on to yell or something or have a bad attitude. I'm like, why?
Which makes me ask, Tamika, you said that sometimes the buyer's agents are asking you the next day, like, have we heard back? What is your scripted response to that? Getting nice way, saying,
I always say the seller is still working on getting quotes. And it's the truth. It's not just the script. Now, I will say it makes it a lot easier when the agent specifically says, I know you have so-and-so number of days. The buyer is asking me, and that is why I'm reaching out. So I appreciate them telling me that. But then I also let them know, especially if, okay, they have 3 quotes already, and I know that they're only waiting on 1 more. Hey, they have 1 more that they need to get in. They're expecting to have it in on such and such day, and then we can expect to have a response. Or if I have a call already scheduled with them, we got a call scheduled for this time to discuss it, and then we'll have something to you. But there are agents that, like, literally send the thing at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then at 5 o'clock in the evening, ask if you have a response. And I think that comes from lack of experience. You haven't worked with enough people to know that, no, we don't have a response. And if you do, it was emotional, or you didn't ask for anything.
Yeah, I do have one other thing I wanted to mention too. When you do get the receipts and invoices back, read through them, because sometimes they may not be doing all the work that you asked for in your repair addendum.
so not addressing the actual items that you
Or
asked
they might have
for.
skipped a thing or something. I've run into that, at least when I was on Lisa's team, that there's things that get missed. So just make sure you're reading that receipt and comparing it to your repair addendum.
Lori, do you have anything that you want to add, or do we have any questions in chat first?
No questions in chat, and I think that they covered everything.
Okay. Do we have any questions here?
I got one.
Oh, yes,
Um,
Nathan.
Yeah. So I'm a lot like Brian, I'm a horse trader. Let's make a deal. So this is a statement and a question. I like to take the approach of there was value established, and then stuff was found in the value, there's a gap. So we need to fill that gap with value. Yeah. So we agreed on offers and terms, everybody's good, but then, hey, whoa, wait a second, the value's dropped. There's some, diminishment in the value, let's fill it. I love doing closing costs or home warranty, get the seller to do that. And with 2 brokers in the room here, advise me Yeah, I'll horse trade and be like, hey, leave the beer in the fridge, in the garage, right? Like any little thing to throw some value up there on both sides. Do I need to be careful with that? Like, I'm not doing any kind of, what's the one, bill of sale? I'm just putting in an addendum, like seller agrees to leave the garage in the shed and the rakes also. 'Cause
Are you
there's
saying that you're
$100
doing that in the contract, or are you doing it in a separate addendum or bill of sale?
I don't want or like to do bill of sales because I don't want to get into being eBay where I'm helping people establish prices. But I'm quick to horse trade like Brian, and I want to make sure I'm not doing anything out of bounds. So if I'm representing the seller and they're asking for lots of stuff, we're pretty much going to tell them no. We got 9 other people. But if we're not, or we want to work with them, I will sometimes. I'll throw it out to the other agents, especially if I know them. I'll be like, hey, Brian, look, man, we had 15 offers and blah, 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 blah. But would your buyer, would they want that, would it help them to have the lawnmower in the backyard or something? Just try to get it off of fixed. Plus, honestly, I hate the repair addendum part. I'm not a project manager. I don't enjoy that at all. It's tedious. I'd like to get away from that and go closing costs, warranty, lawnmower in the backyard, beer in the fridge, Chick-fil-A coupons, like whatever. Just let's reach an agreement. Let's be done.
Yeah, I definitely think that when they're coming to doing that sort of thing, you do need to have it on an addendum. It needs to be in writing. Just doing it like, verbally or in text, that's not good enough. In an addendum, at least you're establishing. Now, you need buyers and sellers to sign it so that they're all in agreement. The worst thing I can remember is a buyer driving past looking at their, soon to be home, and the seller's outside and they're waving that, oh, I will stop and start talking to them. And then suddenly there's the bird bath in the front yard. Oh yeah, we'll leave that for you. And then it's gone at closing, and it was, never put in writing. So definitely have it in writing, even if it's just a separate addendum. Lori, how would you?
I had a hard time hearing some of it, but I heard something about personal property and bill of sale, and just all personal property needs to be on a bill of sale. It's, that's just kind of what it is. So if you put it in an addendum, it's just not supposed to be that way. It needs to be on a bill of sale.
Yeah, I know with the bill of sales, part of the idea, and I'm not real good at those, but I'll say what I think. Is if you have it on there and it's for $0 that the seller's giving this to the buyer, then if the appraisal does come out wrong, the seller can't take that away because it's at no value, no cost. So it's no longer really a tradable item for value. So that could throw some kinks in it. I don't know. If any of you have any bill of sale.
That's kind of more of the nature of my question, honestly. Which one, bill of sale or addendum? Especially the bill of sale, if it's not a dollar amount, it'll take it on there.
Yeah, I mean, most times the bill of sale is for $0. The seller is leaving X items. I've only seen a couple that weren't that way, and that's because it was a huge honking safe in the master bedroom closet, and they did not want to move the sucker, but it was worth a lot of money. So in that case, they did a consideration on it, but yeah.
And when you say you don't want to get into the bartering, I let the buyer and seller work out the details of the cost, If seller says they want to leave it and they want to be paid for it, you need to tell me how much you want to be paid for it. It's still your item. And if you if you have no idea, well, Mr. Buyer, they're willing to leave this for you. How much are you willing to give them for it? And let them come up with numbers, and it's not us coming up with numbers.
Yeah, and a home warranty is always a good idea to put on a repair addendum. If the seller doesn't want to make some of the little repairs, then it might be cheaper to throw a $500 home warranty at the buyer. And I don't know, and this is extending a little bit of the time. I'm sorry, but one of the things that I was thinking was, are any of you finding that buyers are waiting until the last minute to turn in repair addendums, hoping that some of the other buyers that might have been waiting in the wings have gone away? Are they using that as a strategy to try and weed out buyers so that maybe the sellers, oh, we're 2 weeks into this now, we don't want to have to start over and make another payment? Are you
If they
finding?
did, I didn't know. I could have a lot of that work.
Okay. What about you? Anybody at home have that?
Now you put it back on the market and have be back under contract in 3 hours, so I mean, it's a difficult strategy to sell.
Yeah.
I mean, now we're doing so many more backup offers. Learning that game.
That was a great discovery, wasn't it? Offer.
Yeah.
Addendum.
I like the addendum, it's a great form.
One other thing I was thinking about too, that if the seller does not do any of the repairs or the deal falls through, just reminding them that they have to disclose all these items that were found, if they're not willing to fix them. And, you know, it's gonna come up again.
You go to the next buyer, but you better disclose it.
Yeah, but also a new inspection could mean that new items are found as well. I mean, not every home inspector is they're not, we like to think that they're doing them all the same way, but they can come up with other items. And if they do, now that's something new your seller has to address. So maybe let them know that as well. Any last questions? Yeah.
Just add your point, and every buyer is different. I had one recently where we had a super thorough home inspection. The deal fell through because of an appraisal. We went to the backup offer, and I'm thinking, man, we're great on the inspection. These guys got 3.5 hours in home. Thorough inspection. And the buyers, they got their own inspection and found something that the other guy didn't find. And that became the hang up.
Yeah.
We got it through, but it's always what's that buyer gonna see.
Yeah. So what's another inspector gonna find, or what's another buyer gonna, they may look at that same inspection report and have different ideas of what's important to them. So not every buyer is the same, right? Not every home inspector is the same, that's right.
One thing I have found that I've had to do a lot recently too with sellers is remind them that yes, we had 13 other offers, but none of them were as good as this offer. And even with this repair, you're going to net more if you pay for this repair versus going back on the market or even cycling through the other 13. But if you had 13, what's the chance you're going to get one higher than what you already had?
Right, and then are you going to that agent, that backup one, and saying, hey, here's the inspection report, would your buyer be asking for these same,
So a lot of times, if we do go to the backup offer, or if it wasn't a backup offer and there was just 13 other offers, not a backup contract, we'll give them the inspection reports and negotiate the repairs upfront before we go into the whole contract. And then that way, the buyer and the seller know exactly where we're going to end up.
yeah, have you already released the first contract, or are you doing this before releasing that one?
So I'm giving
Talking to another buyer about what they might or might not ask for.
if the, we're not doing this until they told us they want to release.
Okay.
And then now we might still be shuffling through signatures. But once they told us they want to release, then, okay, as soon as we know we're not going to work out. Because the first thing is to try and save it. Well, what can we do to save it? But if I can't save it, then you've got to.
And I will say, Lori's class on the 6th is going to go more into the process of repair addendums, like start to finish, like you've got a ratified contract, and then each step of the process. So hers is going to be more of an in-depth dive, and I believe it's going to be more of a workshop as well, right, Lori?
Yeah, we're going to have it both. We're going to have in depth, a lot of different things. We're going to be going over scenarios, how to negotiate out into detail. And also we're going to have some interactive play as well.
Right, some actual repair addendums, inspection reports to look at and kind of see what they look like.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be a really good class for new agents, especially, or, anyone out there who wants a little more in-depth look and doesn't know how to interpret some of the inspection reports. And that's April 6th at what time?
12 o'clock.
12 o'clock. And there's lunch provided. So there you go. Who doesn't like that, right? All right, any other questions? We'll wrap it up. Well, I really want to thank the panelists. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it. And hopefully everybody got, learned something, a couple nuggets here and there. And you guys have a great day. Thanks, thank you. You were late.
I'm here to end it.
Oh.
Bye.
So look, it did make me think those gift cards.
Yeah.
Because I had done that to this family house in Chick-fil-A and I knew exactly what it was.
Oh, okay.
I've never done that. Just